good morning. Or actually, maybe it's not morning, I don't know, but it is morning here as I'm recording this. I want to share with you, I'm just going to read aloud from this book that I found on the street, actually, right in front of my building. Maybe it was a neighbor's. I would never have found it in a bookstore. The more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. I love the title because when I think of it, I automatically think of a more beautiful world than our hearts know is possible. Which tells me, psychologically, that's my background is in psychology. It tells me that I'm thinking from a smaller place and that there are many worlds of which there is one, which is why I would think a more beautiful world. But the idea of this title, The More Beautiful World, itself is a really powerful concept. Like, there is already this more beautiful world. Instead of that our hearts or than our hearts know is possible, just the beautiful world our hearts know is possible, it tells us that we're already ready to realize it. So this guy, I think, I think he knows what's up. So I'm really just in the first few pages, so I'm reading from there. Okay. These moments that we call boredom, we can feel its discomfort. Of course, any behavior that alleviates pain without healing its source can become addictive. We should therefore hesitate to cast judgment on anyone exhibiting addictive behavior, a category that probably includes nearly all of us. What we see as greed or weakness might merely be fumbling attempts to meet a need, when the true object of that need is unavailable. In that case, the usual prescriptions for more discipline, self-control, or responsibility are counterproductive. Notice whether, when I describe people running from one purchase to another, you felt any contempt or smugness. That too is a kind of separation. The transition we are entering is a transition to a story in which contempt and smugness no longer have a home. It is a story in which we cannot see ourselves as better than any other human being. It is a story in which we no longer use fear or self-contempt to drive our ethics. And we will inhabit the story not in aspiration to an ideal of virtual non-judgment, forgiveness, etc., but in sober recognition of the truth of non-separation. He wrote another book. In Sacred Economics, I made the point that what we perceive as greed might be an attempt to expand the separate self in compensation for the lost connections that compose the self of interbeing. That the objects of our selfish desires are but substitutes for what we really want. This is the best part. Advertisers play on this all the time, selling sports cars as a substitute for freedom, junk foods and soda as a substitute for excitement, brands as a substitute for social identity, and pretty much everything as a substitute for sex, itself a proxy for the intimacy that is so lacking in modern life. We might also see sports hero worship as a substitute for the expression of one's own greatness, amusement parks as a substitute for the transcending of boundaries, pornography as a substitute for self-love, and overeating as a substitute for our connection or feeling of being present. What we really need is nearly unavailable in the lives that society offers us. You see, even the behaviors that seem to exemplify selfishness may also be interpreted as our striving to regain our interbeingness. So I'm going to stop reading there, even though it goes on and it's quite nice. the way that he describes things, just one after another, hits hard for me. I've felt these things and I've never been able to really like articulate it in the proper way, and especially I've never been able to articulate it boom, 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 one after another like this. Junk food for excitement, that one really speaks to me. I don't actually eat junk food or processed food at all. I stopped that a long time ago. But even just the reach for certain things that are really sweet, really intensely sugary, I think these days, you know, even like apples, dates, they're just bred, and even if they're not GMO, even if they're just organic, they've been bred for so many generations to be sweeter and sweeter and sweeter because that's what we like. That when we do pick up something that's a natural food, even though it's not processed, not junk, it can bring that sense of excitement that, you know, for me comes from creative work or from making something like this, you know. So it depends on what the need is and how we reach for it, right? And what he says, this is something that I write about again and again, and, you know, inshallah, I actually produced this book for you to read, but something I write about again and again, that any behavior can be addictive. When I was in school, when I was studying psychology, when I was working in neuroscience, we would study pathology. We would bring in people who have been clinically diagnosed with quote-unquote real problems, you know, real problems like chronic fatigue, autism, psychopathy, things that you can say are, you know, diagnosable. And there's a book, the DSM, and these things are wrong and these things are not wrong. There's like clinical assessments for these things. I feel that's so false. You know, we all have these, I don't know, my dad would say we all have problems, but the idea that anything can be addictive is a very powerful concept, and if we can teach this or we can accept this in a more societal way, that we all understand this to be true, you know, I just don't think we'd have maybe as much economic growth because we wouldn't be shopping as much, or eating out as much, or buying new clothes as much. So in terms of ways that you can see this within yourself, it's one thing to just say, like, theoretically, and it's easy to do this, oh, I have a problem with shopping, oh, I have a problem with junk food, oh, I have a problem with dating or online dating, or serial monogamy or not monogamy, or what have you, whatever your sin of choice may be. You know, all you have to do is just stop it just for a little while. I don't think New Year's resolutions really work like that. For me, for example, shopping is something that I used to do a lot. I still buy things once in a while, not quite every day. I might buy food most days because I only buy a little bit. But shopping has been something that I grew up doing, right? It was something that my mother and I would bond over. We would go shopping. It was an activity. For me, I never felt like I don't have enough clothing, I need a new something. It was more like society, especially for women, has invented so many categories of things. Oh, here's the strappy tank top. Oh, you also need a thick strap, square neck tank top. Oh, you also need a tank top that like goes a little bit crossed at the back. Oh, you also need a tank top, this one is short, that's a little shorter, a little longer, and a little looser. A tank top that's all of these things but a different material. And so they've invented 1 billion variations of tank top. They don't do this as much for men, for whatever reason. 1 billion variations of tank top. And so we're conditioned to feel need at all times. I need this slight variation because we don't see it as serving a purpose. This clothing is designed to make me feel warm, to cover my body just barely when it's really hot, like right now. they make it seem like, oh, you need this fashionable and trendy thing because you need to be a better, fashionable, more desirable, more worthy woman, female, human, however you identify yourself as. And something, I don't know what year this was. I'm going to look up the copyright now. 2013. Gosh, so branding wasn't even that major then, so it's been 11 years. But when he talks about branding, you need to be branding in order to have a social identity, that hits so hard. Because when they sell you something, they want to sell you something expensive, and if it's cheap, it feels kind of like, you feel self-conscious, right? Like, this isn't the expensive thing that some very expensive human being would have bought, and you feel this sense of shame and comparison automatically, even having bought something. And so this idea of needing social identity is part of the clothing addiction, or needing to feel better about yourself, and you reach outwards, right? Like, there's a real need, and society doesn't tell us how to go inside, right? Like, if you do a lot of real yoga, and I don't mean like the franchise corporate, like pick up weights and then like make a prayer all together kind of yoga. I don't mean that. I mean like something like real holistic and like visceral, like real. If society taught those practices, probably the economy wouldn't be growing at such an intense rate. And I don't think we really need to grow the economy at that rate. There have been movements and books written about this over the last 50 years, that the idea that everything in the economy needs to get bigger and bigger and bigger is just part of the same level of psyche that we have. Like, we need to accumulate wealth, we need to accumulate valuable possessions, we need to become more valuable ourselves. We're just getting older. We're gonna die. Every single one of us, they don't tell you that. So I think, we're all mortal, none of us is immortal, and you live accordingly, right? So once you recognize you have this thing, and like going back to this idea of shopping, buying clothes, buying things, you just stop, Usually it takes like a sort of a wake-up call, right? Like when I went to Puerto Rico, every time I go to Puerto Rico, something major happens. When I went to Puerto Rico, I had this little suitcase, and I didn't have a laundry machine at any point, which is very challenging. So I was limited by how much clothing I was able to carry with me, right? And here I have this major closet, with a washer dryer inside of it. So when I came back, I realized I have more clothes right now that I can probably wear out in who knows how long. Like, coats, jeans, it'll take decades for those things to really wear out. Jeans are another thing. They tell you you need the low-rise flare, you need the high-rise skinny, you need the acid wash, you need the dark wash, you need the mid-rise boot cut, you need the jeans that are for going out, you need the jeans for going out to meet your parents, you need the jeans that are going out to run errands. I don't think any of that is true. If you have jeans, just wear them, And eventually they're just gonna feel good. And that's what I've been working on. It's been 3.5 months. It feels like 3.5 years, to be honest. I haven't bought anything. No shoes, no underwear, no tank tops, no trendy new dresses. And I'll tell you, I still have plenty to wear. And the effect for me, and he doesn't talk about it yet, because maybe he'll talk about it later in the book, the effect of quitting an addiction, whether or not somebody else would call it an addiction, is that you suddenly have a whole lot more space inside your head. I do not need to scroll around online shopping anymore. I don't need to look at what's on sale. I don't need to look at what's new and trending. When I get all of these emails for 4th of July, Memorial Day sale, I'm just not interested, because I've already decided I don't need it. If you don't decide, if you don't fully realize you don't need it, then you're always going to be doing what he was talking about, this God, this is awful. The temptation, the self-control, the restriction, the discipline, the not being disciplined, this whole self-suppression. So I would say just act in freedom. Just choose what it is that you recognize as being an addiction or a problem and handle it. You don't have to handle all of it at the same time, that's really overwhelming. If you have a problem with the two things I talked about, junk food and shopping, I wouldn't handle both of those at the same time. Probably handle the junk food first because your physical body. Or if you're having a problem with finances or you don't have space in your closet, handle the more urgent item first. And probably with the extra mental space that you get, it'll be easier to handle the second problem and third and fourth. And it'll be a really positive sort of a snowball effect. And you'll just wake up free and enlightened one day, and you'll just know how blessed you are. I hope that's true for you. I hope that's true for everybody. Enjoy. Be well.